My Hero Academia is an anime that revolves around the quirks. It is a world full of quirks, heroes and villains. While there might be quirks which are more flashy or powerful, but the story of the anime revolves around the quirk that has more history than anyone can think of. It is All for One. Oops, wait up. One for all. But what is this quirk about? A single quirk or power that requires a whole show? Come on, let's find it out. But first, let's know a little about this quirk. One for all is a transferable quirk that can be passed from one user to the next. In order for the quirk to be transferred, the recipient must indigest a sample of predecessor's DNA. One for all cannot be stolen by any means. In order for the quirk to be transferred, the current user must freely choose to transfer it. However, it can be forcibly given as the recipient doesn't have to agree to anything. Considering that, I don't think anyone will say no to one for all. I mean, who doesn't like to be powerful, right? One for all also allows the user to stockpile an enormous amount of raw power and enhance all their physical abilities to a superhuman level. This results in unbelievable levels of strength, speed, agility and durability. Well, as I said before, this quirk has a history deeper than your old great-grandfather. But what is it? One for all is a transferable quirk. Current holder of One for all is our beloved Izuku Midoriya, who is also the main protagonist of the anime. But an amazing thing about this quirk is that he is the 9th holder of this quirk. Yes, 9th. Passed on by All Might, the number 1 hero and symbol of peace, making him the 8th user. But what about the other 7 users? For this we need to dive back way into the past when quirk first appeared. All for One, a man with a quirk that allow him to steal other people's quirk and transfer them to others, forced a quirk on his seamlessly quirkless young brother Yoshi. This quirk allowed him to stockpile power within his body. However, unknown to either one of them, Yoshi already had a quirk with no other power than it could be transferred to another person. This mixture of both the quirk led to the emergence of most beloved quirk of the anime, One for All. Yoshi decided to end his brother's selfish motives, but he was never able to stop his brother. He established a tradition of passing One for All, always with the final goal of ending All for One's evil acts. Talking about second user, little is known about him in the present chapters of the manga. Second user have been reluctant to trust the overwhelmingly idealistic Midoriya, so he has not been able to utilize his quirk, and unlike the other vestiges, he have not spoken to him directly. Second user was part of a resistance group fighting against All for One, and that he and his team had intended to assassinate Yoshi as a part of a plot to overthrow him. He carried with him some sort of gun-line gauntlet similar to Bakugo, which may have been related to his quirk. The second user found Yoshi locked in a dark room and changed his mind, agreeing to work together. The sickly Yoshi passed the quirk on to him, but second user's main quirk is still unknown. The third user of One for All is just as mysterious as the second. It's known that the second and the third user fought side by side in the resistance movement, and that the third user was also present when Yoshi was found. He seemed to have a similar perspective towards Midoriya. The second user passed One for All down to the third user in dire circumstances, although the exact details are still unknown. Yoshi's vestige was finally able to convince him to work with Midoriya. His quirk was first revealed against Lady Nagant, where it was revealed to be based on the martial arts practice of Fajin, an explosive release of power by coordinating the body's movement. Hikage Shinmori was a pro hero and the 4th user of One for All. His quirk, Danger Sense, allowed him and his successor to quickly react to dangerous situations. While Danger Sense has some obvious benefits in combat, it wasn't the kind of offensive ability that one need to battle All for One. Hikage inherited One for All at the age of 22. Knowing that he would never be able to defeat All for One, Hikage spent the next 18 years of his life in the forest, cultivating One for All as much as he could, so that his successor could have a better chance at defeating All for One. This helped him to become the longest lived One for All user beside All Might. After he aged, his body began to develop a distinctive fractures and he ended up passing away from old age at only 40 years old. This period of training was invaluable for stockpiling the power in One for All. Hikage granted One for All to Daigoro Banjo. Decades later, Hikage met Izuku Midoriya within One for All and warns the youngster that One for All should not be transferred to a quirk user. The fifth user of One for All was Daigoro Banjo, a registered professional hero under the name of Laria. He was described to be rather funky. He was the original user of Black Whip quirk, which generates dark energy into a whip-like form and uses the wielder's emotion to maintain itself. Can be used to grapple, restrain and move, making it fairly versatile quirk. It was manifested in Izuku during UA joint training battle. Afterwards, Daigoro meets Izuku within One for All and explains that he must control his emotions in order to control his quirk. He also warns Izuku that later he will manifest the predecessor's quirk and advise him to master those powers. All for One killed Daigoro when he was unable to steal the quirk, but Daigoro managed to pass this quirk to his junior N. The sixth user N was Daigoro Banjo's prodigy and another pro hero. Although little is known about his career, his quirk Smokescreen provides the ability to obscure one's location in a cloud of smoke. When Banjo was mortally wounded in battle against All for One, crushed beneath rubbles and found him, and he was able to receive the power of One for All via his blood, and recognizes the fact that most users of One for All just happen to be in the right place at the right time rather than being chosen. So he can acknowledge the limitations of many of their quirks, claiming that Midoriya had too much respect for them in his fight with Muscular, and also battled All for One directly on several occasions and managed to avoid having his quirk stolen at least twice as well before he died and plucked some of his hair and give it to Nana Shimura. Nana Shimura was the seventh user of One for All, the only female user and pro hero who was All Might's former master. Her quirk Float allowed her to levitate and maneuver to a limited extent while in the air. Nana Shimura is the only previous user who is known to have married and had a family. Shigaraki was once her grandson, Tenko Shimura. After her husband was killed, Nana abandoned her son to protect him from All for One, a decision which she later regretted. Due to this, Katora became abusive towards his son Tenko, causing him to kill his father and go insane. All for One killed Nana and found that Tenko was her grandson, grooming him into becoming the villain now known as Shigaraki. She decided to take a chance by allowing a quirkless lad to inherit the power of One for All, revealing that it reaches its true potential in the hands of the quirkless. The hero life didn't allow for her to be there as much as she should have. She arguably had the largest impact on her successor aside from the first, as All Might's philosophy of always smiling and looking in control was originally hers. Eighth user of One for All is none other than All Might. All Might was a former superhero and an inspiration to many children in his prime, including Izuku when he was younger. All Might inherited One for All from Nana Shimura and wielded the quirk for 40 years. He became the symbol of peace and the #1 pro hero. All Might always despised All for One for killing Nana Shimura, and as revenge, he destroyed All for One's criminal empire and tripled the super. After he enrolled at UA as a teacher, when his body became unfit to use One for All's power and a final confrontation with All for One, which resulted in his later defeat and imprisonment, Toshinori decided that the rest of his life is to train Izuku in mastering One for All. Toshinori was born quirkless, yet he was able to fit into One for All, effectively making it his own quirk. Due to him being still alive, he manifests within One for All as a shade who passes on his knowledge. So that's all for today. Did I miss something? Let me know in the comments. Also considering liking and subscribing the video, as it motivates me to work harder and put out more content. Thank you for watching and have an amazing day ahead.